verse 60. Neither an ego, nor a being, nor a person exists in the skandhas. The Vijnana is born, and the Vijnana ceases. Verse 59 brought us to suchness, tathata. This is where I was pointing to with the expression, a sense of being. We have a sense of being, something intrinsic to ourselves, which is independent of a world out there, and of who others think we are, and of who we think we are. And there's three expressions here: ego, being, and person. Perhaps we could take the ego as our psychological self, the person as an entity, as a social entity. The person is the one that others see, and the one in the middle, the being, is perhaps inclined towards ideas of a soul. But whatever shades of meaning we could find here, the point is, none of them have any true existence in the skandhas. The skandhas were covered in video 13, and they could be regarded as a preliminary analysis into what is meant by the self. Now let's remember our perspective here. Let's remember the context. In order to arrive at suchness, in order to arrive at liberation, we need to analyze or understand our relationship with the world. In order to do that, we have to understand what's meant by the individual, ourself, and what's meant by the world. And what's happening in these verses is that both these things are being dissolved. Both the individual and the world are constructs, they're thought constructs, they're conventions which we mistake for reality. The next verses will look at the conventions which we call the world. In this verse, we're examining those conventions which relate to the individual. And the Buddhist approach is to understand the individual in terms of the skandhas. What actually is there? We don't actually experience something called an individual. The individual is a kind of conglomerate term. What there is an apparent body. There are feelings of hunger, of thirst, of sexual arousal. So there are feelings going on. Feelings which can be pleasant or painful or uncomfortable. There's also a particular tone, a particular mood going on, isn't there? At any moment there's a particular mood which colours our experience. So that's what we've got so far. We've got body, we've got feelings, we've got moods. The moods characterise a particular psychological disposition. Conventionally speaking, we'd also say there are perceptions going on. There are sights, sounds, sensations, tastes, smells, thoughts. In Indian understanding, the mind is the organ of thought. It's what perceives thoughts. So that's what's going on. And the fifth skandha is Vijnana, consciousness, which was covered in video 10. But this consciousness isn't consciousness with a capital C. It's consciousness of perception. It's consciousness of sights, consciousness of sounds and so on. But it isn't simply consciousness or awareness of these things. It's that tendency to give reality to them. We see things in a dream. And the consciousness in the dream, the consciousness of sight in a dream, gives reality to these things. But we wake up from that eventually. So there isn't actually an ego. There isn't actually a person. There isn't actually a being. There's just the skandhas going on. An apparent body. Feelings, moods, sense perceptions and thoughts, and awareness of these with the tendency to give reality to them. That's it. I don't think anything's been missed out, has it? That's all that's going on. There's no ego, no person, no soul. Second phrase in verse 60, Professor Suzuki has put some extra explanations in brackets in the second part of verse 60. He says there is birth when the Vijnana is born and cessation when the Vijnana ceases. But I don't think we need these extra bits, because the Vijnana is born and the Vijnana ceases. Consciousness comes and goes. This is what happens when you fall asleep or you pass out. But on an everyday level it's happening all the time. There's consciousness of sights, it comes and goes. You might even walk into a lamp pole. The perception of the lamp pole hasn't gone away, but your awareness of it has. Consciousness of it has. So consciousness is coming and going all the time. These are the dancing waves, which were mentioned in verse 57. There's this perennial dance going on. The dance of the senses, the dance of the Vijnanas. Now this analysis of the skandhas is a provisional analysis. It doesn't leave us with very much, it just dissolves the conventional reality that there's an individual here, which is quite revolutionary. But like any revolution, it's not just a question of bringing something down. We must have somewhere better to turn to. And verse 63 points this out. But before we get to verse 63, we need to address the nature of the world in verses 61 and 62.